Chapter 3 Emergency Functionality. Benny's long blonde hair was tied back in a ponytail, his gaudy brown cowboy boots up onto the control panel. A cigarette dangled from his mouth as he used his hands to stroke the legs of the woman sitting on his lap. He wore blue jeans and a Hawaiian shirt patterned with bright orange flowers. The woman seated on his lap, Carolina, wore combat boots that came to her knees, short jean shorts that only just kept her from being in the nude, and a thin white top that left little to the imagination. Her long brown hair spilled all over Benny's chest in dreadlocks. Tyr looked at the couple and scoffed. "Fucker always has all the fun while we're out working," he griped to Solomon, taking a drag off his e-cigarette. Solomon shrugged. "If you think you can do his job better, you can bring your old lady on board, I guess." The interior of their ship was small. There was one living room which bled into the cockpit, with only a barely visible threshold. At the back of the seating area was a door that led to a larger cargo bay, which could further open to load and unload objects. Below deck there was a small storage room, the engine bay, and the airlock room. Above them there was a small pod for the gunner to sit inside of, although their guns weren't equipped to deal with anything much bigger than their own ship. Off against the wall, Preacher was powered down with a charging cable plugged into his back. "Where we heading, Benny?" called Frost. "Thinking Stratos 3. Seems like you guys could use a drink or 20 after that hit. Then, after that, shit, might as well head off to Gaia, see if we can get some cash on that painting." Men all nodded. They rode on in silence for a while, with nothing but the hum of the ship's engines and the slight rattling of the hull to calm them down. Benny blazed through half a pack of cigarettes while most of them seemed to fall in a state between uneasy rest and sleep. Carolina nuzzled her way deeper into Benny's chest. Benny glared out the window, allowing himself to be lulled into a transcendental state as the light of the stars slowly passed by and the black void stretched out ahead of them. He looked over the control panel, full of throttles, switches, small screens, knobs, and buttons. He reached up and scratched Carolina like she was a puppy. Eventually, he too passed out. Benny woke with a jolt as Frost's hand shook his shoulder. Frost's blonde, high and tight, reflected in the dim fluorescent lights above. Benny stared at him for a few moments, as if he were a strange alien creature, before coming to his senses. "Almost there. About 20 minutes till," said Frost, before taking another drag off his own cigarette. "Shit. How long was I out?" "A good 2 hours. It's all right. I was watching everything. Couldn't sleep anyhow." "What the hell happened on that ship?" Frost shook his head and rose from the co-pilot seat. "Fuck if I know, dude. Just weird shit, that's all. Weird fucking shit." The ship breached the planet's atmosphere at 1855 according to Strat 3 time. The sun was just starting to sink past the rolling red mesas of the planet's far western hemisphere. Oil rigs dotted the plains, which were really the only reason the planet was inhabited to begin with. The ship slowly descended towards a scummy-looking cluster of rusted steel platforms placed in and around a particularly large mesa. Neon light particles and smog drifted upwards towards the ship as Benny guided it towards one of the many target landing platforms. Slowly the ship descended, the thrust engines slowing the descent to a crawl as they neared the landing pad. Rusted-over covers opened with a groan. The short landing gears made a grinding noise as they inched out. The ship landed on the pad with a jolt, rattling the marauders. Tyr's head bumped into the wall and he swore loudly. The radio on the dashboard flashed rapidly between red and blue. Benny grabbed it off the hook. Yellow. Subject B3NY, please transmit your landing documents prior to disembarking. Crackled the radio. Yes, sir. Passport number is 0578286622. There was silence for a few moments. The radio crackled again. Clear to disembark. Please ensure all crew carries identification for the duration of your stay, as is required under Azonian state law. Roger that. Over and out. Benny turned, grinning to the men. All right, boys, be back by dawn. I'm gonna go rustle up some liquor and shoot some pool. Frost, you're with me, said Solomon. Frost's face fell. Solomon grinned. Relax. There'll be plenty of time for whores. We're just running a quick errand, that's all. Frost nodded. All right. Better be quick. Relax, Frost, said Tyr. I'll save you sloppy seconds at Kate's. Frost scoffed as Tyr rose and plodded towards the exit hatch. Don't worry, joked Titan, rising and stretching. He only touches droids anyway. Frost and Solomon both had to stoop slightly just to stand in the small room. Trash and scrap metal littered the floor of the small shack. A short, fat, bespectacled man sat across a desk in front of them, peering over the holographic display Solomon was showing him. The little man made small groans and clicked his tongue as he looked over the picture. Frost could smell his sweat and body odor from across the table. The cosmic smile, muttered the little man. As best I can tell, it's a genuine Geovault. Where'd you find this, anyway? Not important, replied Solomon. Can you buy it? The man snorted. Fat chance. You see the place I live in? Much too high class a piece for me, and I probably couldn't even find a buyer on this shithole of a planet. Even if I did, the security I'd need. No. Much too much trouble. However, I'm more than willing to put you in contact with some potential buyers on Gaia. Great, said Frost, eager to leave the decrepit shack. For a fee? What's your asking price? Solomon inquired. A measly sum, really. How's 150,000 interplanetary creds sound? Holy shit! After you've locked in the sale. Of course, this will be nothing to you. I assure you this is easily worth 5 mil. Yeah, split across a handful of guys in our pilot. Starts not looking like near as much. I can find my own buyer. Solomon turned to walk off. Wait! Solomon paused. I could do 100,000, but I'd need half up front for this. Solomon studied him intently. Deal. The two walked out of the small shack and down the street. Pimps hawked their used-up droid prostitutes, badly cleaned, grimy-looking things. Food carts littered the metal grate pathway, obnoxious vendors all shouting and trying to get passerbys to pay for different cuts of mystery meat. Frost pulled a pack of cigarettes from his front pocket and lit one while eyeing Solomon the whole while. What's wrong? Solomon asked. Frost shook his head. The Saul I knew would have never taken that deal. He'd have told that greasy dealer to go fuck himself. Solomon chuckled. I'm getting old, Frost. Plenty of crotchety old men. It's a lot of money. Enough to quit this shit for good even after his fees. even after we divvied up. Frost sputtered. You're thinking about quitting? Not thinking about it, Frost. I am quitting. You've never mentioned it before. Wasn't pertinent information. After everything we've built, everything we've been through, you're just gonna leave it all behind? Solomon sighed. Frost, come on. You're only 4 years younger than me. I know you feel the same wear on your body. The war wasn't easy on me. Wasn't easy on me either. Broke both my legs, reconstructive surgery on my right hand. Hell, it's a medical miracle I still have sight. But quitting? What will you even do all day? Solomon shrugged. Hunt, fish, maybe take up writing or art. Anything but this shit. Anything to forget this shit. Nothing wrong with this shit. I'm tired, Frost. Tired of sprinting, tired of hiding, tired of clearing corridors, tired of shooting. Damn sure tired of getting shot at. How are we supposed to keep doing this without you? Half the guys already look at you as the leader now anyway. You'll be fine. Frost finished his cigarette and flicked it away. There was a sad twinge in his eyes. When are you telling the guys? Solomon shrugged. I'm not. You can break the news after I'm gone. Hell, I don't want to hear from any of these degenerates ever again after I retire. So that's it, huh? Degenerates. I see now. Don't want to hang around lowlifes like us. That's not what I meant, Frost. No, you've still got that stuck-up fucking officer mindset all these years later. Solomon laughed. Frost, you'll understand one day. Probably sooner than you think. There's nothing stuck up about it. Frost shook his head. Don't think I ever will, Saul. These guys, they're young, sure. Stupid, too. But they're all that's left after the war. I know. The two strolled on in silence. Androids always grossed Frost out. He'd never gotten the appeal. His knees sank into the cushy bed as his passionate pace quickened. Androids were weird to him, but he couldn't stop thinking about them. Sure, you could get most anything you wanted. Cartoon girls, triple-titted whores, some now extinct ethnicities. Of course, there was the advantage of not worrying about diseases or winding up paying for a child on a different planet from yourself. But as he felt the sweat of his partner against his body, heard her panting like a dog, felt her heartbeat through her ribcage, he realized there were just too many little pleasures to pass up just to get a body you were more attracted to. He finished and rolled off the woman into the bed, breathing heavy, allowing himself to be enveloped by the velvet bedsheets. She was saying something, but it was as though he had transcended his mortal coil and could no longer hear her, as his soul drifted free. Only soft murmuring trickled into his ears like rainwater through a gutter. He was at peace, drifting through the darkness, relief enveloping him. Then the grin popped into his head, like a weasel from a hole. The slightly crooked teeth painted in stark white, the mouth stretching just a little too far to be a normal smile, the lips vibrant and full of life. His eyes snapped open. Where'd that come from? He wanted to shake his companion for round 2 and try and clear his head, but the thought of such a thing now repulsed him as his mind fixated on that cosmic throne. The jester's little eyes seemed to gleam brighter than the stars around him, radiating mischief. What a horrible character, sitting in the cosmos as if he were a god, as if he were the ruler, when in fact he was nothing but a fool. Who was he to sit in such a place? It made Frost's skin crawl just thinking about it. Who would paint such a thing? Why paint such a thing? What was gained by it? Who could really say, save for the artist himself? Pure madness it was. Frost's comm device suddenly blared from the nearby nightstand. "Need me to leave?" his companion asked in a half-whisper, half-purr. "No, it's just..." The cosmic jester, eternally grinning, eternally floating through the cosmos, flashed across his mind. The comm buzzed again. Frost shook his head free of the thoughts. He snatched his communicator off the bedside table. He cocked an eyebrow, seeing Benny's name pop up on the screen, then swiped to answer it. "Hello?" "Hey, Frost," Benny slurred through the speaker. "I need representation from my favorite lawyer. In a bit of a pickle right now." "Be there in a minute," said Frost, then hung up. Shit. He rose hurriedly, dressing himself all the while the woman protested. Frost largely ignored her and ducked through the door. He strolled through the whorehouse at a brisk pace, pondering why whorehouses always had to be so tacky. Neon lights lit the hallways, slathered in sleek red paint, and the shag carpet below was old, rotting, and full of dubious stains. He descended the spiral staircase into the main lobby, which was much the same as the rest of the brothel. Just outside the automatic front doors, Tyr lounged against the wall, smoking a cigarette. An android hung around his neck, almost like a real woman, but her dead eyes and jerky movements gave it away. The cat ears were a turn-off, too. Her synthetic lips pressed against Tyr's neck, and the man had a grin plastered on his face like that of a 12-year-old boy. "Tyr, we gotta go," barked Frost. "What's the rush?" Tyr prodded, not showing any indication of moving. "Benny called me asking for his lawyer." "Fuck." They made their way through the winding alleys at a rapid pace, ascending and descending stairs to the various levels. Anything lawyer-related was their code for shit really going down, given that they did not in fact employ a lawyer. Solomon had bounced the idea off of them at one point, but the men much preferred keeping the money they earned and were willing to eat the jail time over it. They arrived at the landing pad to a sight nobody wanted to see. 3 police cars were surrounding the ship, lights flashing, with Benny bent over the hood of one in handcuffs. Carolina was shrieking something at the police, but they were ignoring her. Benny's face perked up when he saw his friends arriving. "Hey, guys," he slurred, obviously drunk. "Could use a hand." "Tyr, tell them they're fucking retards," Carolina shrieked. "Benny didn't do nothing wrong." Tyr held a hand out in a calming motion, and the pair strode forwards. Frost went to the man who had Benny bent over the hood, analyzing the situation. The police were clad in white body armor, complete with blackened-out face shields on. "Officer, this here is my client who requested to speak with me," began Frost. "What seems to be the issue?" The cop looked Frost up and down, then chuckled. "First lawyer I've ever seen wearing a fucking jumpsuit. You can visit him in his cell." "Now, listen." "You fucking cocksuckers!" screamed Carolina. "He don't have no fake papers." "I assure you," chimed in Tyr, "my client is an upstanding citizen who would never—" "Listen," said the officer. "I get the little game you're trying to play. It ain't working on me. There will be plenty of time to visit your buddy in his containment cell." Benny sheepishly grinned. "Kinda fucked up this time, didn't I?" "Hey, don't worry, Benny. Frost's words were cut off by the bark of a gun. The police officer they'd been talking to pitched forward, blood blowing out his shattered visor. The police force's heads all whipped around. Carolina pointed a revolver at the officer closest to her and fired again. The officer pitched backwards onto his car, clutching his bleeding throat. One of the cops managed to draw his gun, but Tyr had been quicker on the draw. 2 shots went into the back of the cop's head. All the policemen now dove for the ground, caught between intersecting lines of fire. One fired wildly, and Carolina screamed as a bullet shattered her pelvis. Frost dumped his magazine, killing 2 and injuring 1 more. The injured man rose, his white armor slicked in blood, hands raised in surrender. Tyr's revolver barked. The surrendering man tumbled backwards. The remaining officers now turned, firing on Tyr and Frost. Frost winced, feeling a searing pain in his shoulder, followed immediately by a blast to his ribs, which took him off his feet. Tyr jumped onto the hood of a police car, blowing the cover of the 2 officers and firing twice into one's head. The other officer wasted half his mag, predominantly plinking into his car, then managed to land 1 shot through Tyr's leg. Tyr grunted, leaping down from the car and stomping the man's head into a bloody mess of twisted metal and shattered glass. The last officer rose, aiming the shot on Tyr's head, but Benny rammed into him, bowling both men over. Frost racked the slide on his gun as he pitched forwards, using the hood of a cop car as he steadied himself. The police officer scrambled up, only just managing to get on his feet before his brains splattered a nearby windshield. Frost, Tyr, and Benny didn't exchange so much as a single word before acting. Frost breezed up the stairs and into the cockpit, while Tyr pulled Carolina into the ship. Benny sat down and waited for his handcuffs to be broken. Frost flipped a few switches on their radio, then pressed a glowing red button in the corner. The alert tone was sent, and everyone else would be there soon enough. Next, he flipped more switches and pressed more buttons, priming the ship for takeoff. The jets on the bottom of the vessel began at a low whine, which gradually developed into a roar. Solomon was the first back on the ship, with Gearhead in tow. The 2 bounded through the door right as Tyr was breaking Benny's handcuffs, using the butt of his pistol like a hammer to drive a bowie knife through the metal links. "What the hell happened?" Solomon asked, bewildered. Frost spun around in his chair, managing to grin in spite of the obvious pain written across his face. He coughed. "Could use a hand with these engines. Think Benny's still too drunk to manage it." "I'll be all right," slurred Benny, lurching forwards towards the controls. Solomon cut Benny off, shoving him back into his seat. "Just sit tight. We'll manage somehow, I'm sure." Solomon sat down next to Frost, noticing for seemingly the first time that his comrade was leaking blood all over the leather co-pilot seat. It pooled and stained his jumpsuit a dark brown, then dribbled onto the metal floor, leaving large splatter marks. "You, okay?" Solomon inquired. Frost coughed, a little bit of blood flying past his lips. "I'll manage. You know, Carolina and Tyr are both hit too. Frost, go boot up Preacher. He'll know what to do." Frost waved his hand. "There's really no need. That's an order." Frost's eyes narrowed into slits. He hadn't heard phraseology like that in years. "We aren't in fucking uniform anymore, Sergeant." "Sorry," muttered Solomon, "but you need to go get medical attention." "I think you forgot where exactly we are." "Frost, we don't have time for this shit right now. Go!" Frost glared daggers, but ultimately rose out of his seat and stumbled towards Preacher. Meter came through the opening like a charging bull. "You got anyone on the guns? There's a fucking heat coming all the way down the street. A lot of it." Gearhead grinned. "I'll get on it. Who are we missing?" "Should be just Titan," said Frost, waiting while Preacher stirred to life. Gearhead scrambled up a ladder, placed conveniently in between seats of the main cabin. Preacher whirred, his eye lighting up. The robot shot out a flat beam which scanned Frost up and down. My systems detect 2 injuries stemming from... He beeped for a few seconds while his robotic brain dug through its databanks. A gunshot. Frost managed to wheeze out a chuckle. No shit, preacher. I can provide medical assistance, but I need consent. Do you consent? Yes. The robot bent at the waist and scanned over the wound in Frost's shoulder again. One arm raised up and the mechanical hand of the robot hinged downwards. A small rod protruded from the stump of the hand. You may feel a brief moment of pain. Do not be alarmed. I am merely cauterizing the wound. There was a flash from the top of the rod. Frost squeaked in pain, prompting a sniveling stream of laughter from Benny. There was a thunderous roar and a loud explosion which rocked the whole ship. Please hold still, Breacher said in his monotone voice. Titan came through the ship's hatch, gunfire plinking off the metal frame of the door. You guys actually waited for me? He asked, astounded. Solomon pushed up on the throttle, and the hatch shut as the ship lurched upwards. Preacher's wand flashed again, now on the backside of Frost's shoulder, this time eliciting a yelp. Benny once more chortled. Shut the hell up, Benny. The turret on top of the ship fired again, sending a vibration through the whole cab. As the ship ascended into the planet's atmosphere, the crew were jolted and rocked to and fro. Frost felt his ears pop as the pressure climbed faster than the cabin could stabilize it. Soon they were in space once more, hurtling through the black void. Preacher continued on his task of mending the wounded, while Solomon spun his chair around. All right, Benny. You care to explain what the fuck just happened? Benny sheepishly grinned, sobriety encroaching faster than he wanted. Well, I was drunk. I gathered that. And some dickhead pigs just rolled up on me in Carolina. Just having a good time, not hurting anyone. Maybe a little rowdy, but I mean, come on, it's fucking Strat 3. The party planet. Benny, Solomon growled. So, they checked my license and my passport papers and, as you know, both are fraudulent. Right. So, how did we end up with, by my count, at least 10 dead cops? Carolina opened her mouth to speak, but Tyr cut her off. I got too heated and blasted one. He hung his head. Sorry, Saul. Solomon eyed him, not buying one single word of it. It is what it is now. Best thing to do is get the fuck out of here. Lay low for a while. I think the Atkinson galaxy will be a good place. That far? Frost griped. With the amount of shit I'm seeing on radar, probably farther. Shit. Frost eased back into his seat, the adrenaline wearing off and the blood loss setting in. Slowly, his eyes fluttered, then shut. Frost awoke with a jolt as he was slung full force into his seatbelt. The ship vibrated as the flak cannon mounted on the top fired round after round. His whole side throbbed in agony as he gripped the handle on either side of his seat. Hey, Frost, called Benny in between frantically flipping switches. Guess how much? How much what? Frost groaned back. The ship shuddered and rocked. They'd been hit. Terra 9 is close enough, Solomon said, maneuvering the control stick rapidly. How much worth? Benny called. 25 quid. Benny laughed. Try that times $1,000. Frost's mouth went dry. He struggled to undo his seatbelt, then pushed up, staggering towards the cockpit as the ship jolted one direction, then the other. Benny laughed and pointed at a small holographic display on the dash. Pictures of Frost, Tyr, Carolina, and Benny were illuminated, the word "Wanted" underneath them in big, bold characters. Each were worth 2,500 interplanetary credits. "Fuck," said Frost. "No time to wallow in self-pity," said Solomon. "We have some bounty hunter cocksucker on our tail, and we ain't losing him. 2 cop cruisers behind that. We're making an emergency landing." Hey, welcome back, everyone. This has been Void Wolves, written by Warren Walker, read by Warren Walker. Both me. Music as per usual by @WhiteBat Audio or Carl Casey. This is, I don't have much to say this week. I debated not even recording this, but I don't know. I think it makes it more personable to have a little outro on the end, regardless of how small. So the long and short of it is next week episode might not be on time. I don't know if it will or won't be. I'm transferring jobs next week, so it remains to be seen. In terms of everything else, I haven't been really being as productive as I should have been, given the amount of time I have off work right now. But, that's all right. Sometimes you just need to chill out a little bit and let some ideas come to you. So, hope you all have a wonderful week. I hope you had a wonderful week, and take it easy. God bless.